Hi, and thanks again for joining me on Sealed for Good. This week I'm talking about particle board flooring. Many of you know it as yellow tongue, which is an industry terminology that's used out there, but particle board flooring has been around for many years in the construction industry, and somehow it found its way into waterproofing applications as a substrate for tiling and membranes in wet areas. Yes, it has, and many of you still see it out there, and so it is still a grey area, if I could call it that, because many people have certain opinions and thoughts on this. I'm going to give you my position on it, which is Gripset's position, and how we handle it, and our thoughts and processes on how to treat particle board or yellow tongue flooring. So firstly, let's look at internal wet areas. Internal wet areas. Most builders these days will use an inert material. Inert meaning that it doesn't react to thermal temperatures, like cement sheeting, compressed fibre sheeting, or things that we see now like Skyon, Hebel. There's a number of other substrates out there that are of a synthetic base, or your old form concrete that is used for wet area flooring. It's more stable, and even though it still has to be waterproof, it's not as volatile to temperatures. Timber, for those of you who know it very well, is a living and breathing thing, okay? Almost like a bottle of wine. And so, very important to understand that with timber, every time the temperature changes, you're going to have the timber move. Now, it's not visible to the eye, it doesn't move and flex to the point where you can see it, but small movement will happen in the substrate. So we have timber joists on building sites, but then we've got timber flooring. Now, particle board flooring is commonly used in dry areas, very stable for things like vinyl, etc., or carpets. But when we've got tiles and you've got something that's a solid, sound substrate in a wet area, and then you've got particle board flooring underneath, you need to be certain that if it is the floor that you're going to be working over, that precaution's been taken to ensure that it's been fixed correctly. Now, all building substrates need to be fixed properly, I get that. However, if you're tiling over anything with particle board or timber flooring, ensure that it is glued and screwed. Otherwise, you could be the latter, screwed. Get this right, because the important piece is that, and this is imperative, right? Not just about important, it is vitally important that we understand this. Yellow tongue and particle board flooring, it doesn't always have to absorb water for it to move. It will find its way into a movement factor just from the thermal changes that happen within the building substrate or within the construction. And what that does, it will compromise the finish on top. When you've just nailed timber flooring down like you would in a dry area, then its fixing strength is a lot different than when it's screwed and glued down. Very important. So get that piece spot on first. Then you need to make sure it's a timber which is designed for wet areas. And if you're not certain about that, ask your builder or your client and ensure it is. If it's not, you are taking a big risk to try and waterproof or tile over it in a wet area. It's imperative to understand that if the timber flooring is not fixed properly and it's not the correct grade of timber for a wet area, do not take the risk. Now, there are options in that situation. I've seen many tilers and waterproofers, when they're faced with that situation, they will perhaps nail cement sheeting down, the thin HardieFlex, or the equivalent of that, 4 to 5, 6 mil thick over the top. It's a more stable surface which works like an underlay, and then they can put their waterproofing or tiling directly over that. Very important. Tilers or waterproofers must make sure that they've put some sort of cement sheeting underlay down on top of that flooring before they go and lay tiles or waterproofing over the top, to ensure that it is isolated from the surface. Otherwise, the particle board or timber will move and flex and compromise your finish. That's critical. We do have our GC range, our GC1, our GC2, that are used for anti-fracture systems for that, and the GC2 is more of a decoupling. It's a great option, and it's a lot quicker than nailing cement sheeting down onto timber flooring now. Choice for many tilers and our waterproofing friends, so thanks for your support there. But the feedback has been that it's very quick, and it allows you to just flow on and get your tiles down without all the noise of nailing every 100 mil of cement sheet underlay down. Different application again, but just going there in terms of how to prepare the surface. But if you have got yellow tongue flooring in a wet area, I'm always suspicious of it in a shower alcove, that people would still risk putting a membrane over that, even though it may be a wet area grey timber flooring. My preference is I would ask the builder or your client to ensure that you're going to get paid to take the precaution with a membrane like this over the top, or, as I said before, you put the cement sheet down on top of that before you start tiling directly over it, because it's not so much that you're going to have a failure with the waterproofing, but you could have a failure with the tiles cracking, and that brings up the waterproofing, and then it all compounds from there. So get that part right. It's not, I've just seen so many situations where I've seen timber actually mushroom out in applications where it just absorbs, because it doesn't just absorb the thermal moisture from the top, it's from the underside in the cavity. And that there, with temperature change, creates the timber to react as it's designed to do. The other piece is, which really concerns me, particularly when I see in the winter months on building sites, these sorts of sheets are delivered on site and they're left outside sometimes for a week or two before the carpenters start putting them inside. And by that time, they've absorbed dew, rain, all the different moisture conditions that are outside. And then by the time it's put inside, it's already swelled or absorbed a level of moisture. And so you actually don't know if you're going over a bone dry surface. Now, there are moisture meters, very few people are using those, but these are the risks that I talk about that you run when you're waterproofing or tiling directly over them. So be aware of that one. It is a critical one to take note of. Marine ply is a different type of timber. I do get that it's more stable than particle board flooring from what many claim out there, because it's not chipboard as such. However, I still would be very, very cautious in terms of how you treat that and how you approach it. Now, I'm going to talk about the external piece. If you are finding yourself challenged with you go to a building site and the client has timber on their balcony deck, it is red alert. Do not even think about what primer is going to work and what I should be doing. You need to make sure that there is absolutely no chance in hell you're going to waterproof or tile over that. If you do, be aware that all the risk is with you, and there's a major risk, because it doesn't matter what system you use and how good a job you do, that application is going to be at risk for the rest of the time it's out there with the various thermal conditions outside versus an internal wet area, because you've got transfer of thermal conditions, whether it be in the colder parts of Australia or the warmer parts of Australia. And as I said, there's the atmospheric moisture that the timber will absorb from underneath in the eaves and the cavity. So I don't believe anyone should be waterproofing over timber externally. Protect that substrate, as I said earlier, with a system like a cement sheet underlay first, and then waterproof it correctly with one of our systems. And outside now, for our longer term warranties, we go with their GC range. There are other systems out there from other manufacturers that can handle the conditions for external podiums or timber deckings, but do not run the risk with just putting a bead of sealant around there on timber and then a liquid membrane and taping the joints up and hoping that's going to work, because really all you're doing is waiting for that phone call, the phone call you don't want, to go out and fix it again, and then it's a bitch fight from there. Get this right, warn your builder, warn your client if you see it, and explain to them that they run the risk as well, because there is, and I've just seen this, the uneducated will give you a building where they've got this timber down or plywood outside and go, no, just waterproof or tile, it'll be fine. I don't know what people are trying to invent in that situation, but at the end of the day, it's your reputation and you're the one that's accepted the surface, and once you accept that surface, it's your baby, and it's a real ugly one to deal with once you accept that. So get that piece right, very important, very, very important. Now, in terms of the challenges it presents for waterproofing. So, like anything, surface preparation we get right, but we judge the surface and the substrate, and once we know it is correct and we can accept it and it's suitable within the guidelines, because the thing is, if you go back to the manufacturers or the suppliers of the timber, very, very grey in terms of what they'll state on a specification for wet areas. You want to understand what they cover and what their fixing manual is. And so I refer back to this many times with the James Hardie manual. I still find it one of the better ones, and I'm not paid by Hardies to recommend their products, but I'll find their manual in terms of how to fix their deckings, whether it be sky-on or compressed cement sheeting for balconies and decks, is a great one to refer to. It's visual, they give drawings, and there's a written specification and a list on how to approach it in terms of how to fix joints, fix it to the joists, and how you treat it for the waterproofing recommendations. If timber companies can't do the same thing, then you should be asking the question, why not? And that gives you a lot more ammunition to discuss this with your client so they understand where you're coming from. You're trying to protect them and yourself and make sure the job works. Imperative. Okay, so if you've got any questions on yellow tongue, particle board flooring, when we have a situation where we are tiling in an area that might not be a wet area, and there are good tile adhesives out there that can handle the flexibility for timber, we do use things like our Gripset OP. It bonds very well to particle board flooring. But in wet areas, please take caution, because we see this one come unstuck many, many times. And back in the day when I started, I saw lots of jobs where this was used outside, and like I said, had that mushrooming effect. Doesn't matter how good the waterproofing is, you're compromised by the substrate below because it just keeps moving and reacting. Send your inquiries through, very keen to see them. Lots of chat going on with our tech services on this one on a weekly basis. I'm more than happy to engage with you further. Till next time, I'll see you on Silver Good.